Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of the podcast hosted by yours truly, Greg Gala. On this podcast, we're going to talk about new Americans, their access to capital, entrepreneurship, and how being an immigrant coming to the United States for the first time, where you may not know the language, the culture, and yet you can overcome these hurdles and still be able to start your own business, which is one of the hardest things to do, not just here in America, but throughout the world. So how can someone come to a new country and have what I would say the gall or wherewithal to start their own business? Whether it's a gas station, restaurant, liquor store, hotel, any other type of retail business, wholesale business, I think it's because they have this innate ability to overcome their anxiety, their own self-inhibitions, and their want, desire, and need to succeed, to help, their children or future generations. Because, hey, as we all know, everyone comes to the United States in search of their American dream, whether they're fleeing persecution or whether they're coming from a third world country just for a better life, because we know in America we have the freedoms afforded to us that are not afforded to in any other country in the world. That's what makes this country such a great country, and that's why I created this podcast to help new Americans achieve their fullest potential. So we're going to have a bunch of new American immigrant guests on, and we're going to talk to them about their life experiences, how they came to this country, whether it was legal or illegal, or what that process was. How did they come? Do they come on a plane, a boat, run across the border, whichever way. But I think the key topic will be is how did their childhood and coming from their home countries to the United States shape them to become the person they are today, to become an entrepreneur that has been able to be successful. The last and most important thing I think we'll always circle back around to and discuss in this podcast is how to gain access to capital, how to go to a bank, a financial institution, a high net worth individual, or even a venture capital fund, and obtain capital for your passion, your idea, your vision, and how you can turn it around and monetize it and do something that you love, you care about, and that you feel will change the world. Because I think one of the biggest things, and the main reason I myself got into entrepreneurship, was because it was something I loved, I enjoyed, and I cared about. If you end up doing something where you love it, you don't consider it a job, you consider it a gift. Whether it's being a professional athlete or if it's running the corner store or bodega down the street. If you really enjoy it and you see joy in it and not just a means to an end, then you will be more happier, and more successful in your life. So we're going to start with a background about myself, my story. My parents came to America in 1989. We immigrated from Mumbai, India, which is a fairly large city, probably the size of New York City, to a small town called Charlotte, North Carolina. And we were able to come through a process called family migration, where my grandfather came in 1979, and then he put in all of the visa applications. So everyone on my mom's side of the family came throughout the 80s, and we were the last ones to come in 1989. And when my parents came here, came with a couple $100 in their pocket, and we were living as an extended family unit for about 2 or 3 months until they got on their feet. My father's first job within 2 weeks of coming to America, okay? Imagine this. My father went to school where English was not taught. My mother was lucky enough to go to a school where English was taught, but they were able to obtain their green cards came in a week after we came to the U.S., and the very next day, my dad went and applied for a job. So when anyone tells you that immigrants are here for a handout, that's a bunch of BS. So my father's first job in the U.S., and probably the easiest one to get, he was a Pizza Hut delivery guy, making $3.25 an hour in 1989. And by chance, one day, he was delivering pizzas to someone's house who was also of Indian and South Asian descent. And he spoke with my dad and said, "Hey, Mr. Gala, why don't you come and interview for this job application at Circle K? And we can teach you how to work in a gas station instead of making pizzas and delivering them. And hey, we'll pay you an extra 25 cents an hour if you're interested." So my dad said, "Wow, now I can make $3.50 an hour." And he chose that opportunity with help and by chance. So one of the things I always say is hard work is very important, but to truly have that entrepreneurial success, you have to have some things happen at the right time, by chance, a meeting here, a meeting there, fate. A lot of people may not believe in that. You know, my parents do. We go by the Indian calendar on anything we do. And you'll see most immigrants, whether from Central and South America, Southeast Asia, South Asia, even parts of Eastern and Southern Europe, all have very similar, I would say, you know, old wives' tales, family traditions, those kind of things. But getting back to the crux of the situation, my father started in a gas station as a clerk, mopping floors, filling coolers, doing all of that. Within 6 months, he went from that to a store manager, and another 6 months, he was a territory manager for Circle K in 1991. My mother, on the other hand, because she knew English well, actually was immediately able to get a job in a gas station and worked for Exxon corporate at their corporate Tiger Mart stores in Charlotte. And this was 1989, 1990, 1991. The experience and knowledge they gained over those 3 and 4 years, working, I would say, between 80 and 100 hours a week, when those companies would actually pay you overtime. And I remember never seeing my parents growing up. And I think this will be one thing when we have guests on, they'll talk about if they're second generation. I never saw my parents growing up. They have never been to any single one of my baseball games, soccer games, basketball games, any of those. And I think it just shows a testament to their hard work, stick-to-itiveness, and fortitude to provide for their children. And that's kind of what drives those first-generation immigrants into entrepreneurship. So one of the things my parents did in 1992 when they took their leap of faith and actually purchased their own business, they had been working in the C-store industry for a while, but they had never owned their own business. So in 1992, my father purchased his first C-store gas station in a partnership with a family member. Let's just say that did not end well or in an amicable manner. And that's one of the family members that I personally still don't speak to. During that process, however, my parents learned a lot of the background in managing a business and the entrepreneurship. Because, as you know, anyone can work in a business, but actually owning a business and managing it along with HR, payroll, management, supply chain, all of the other things that are entailed, whether it's a multi-million-dollar company or a small convenience store or liquor store in the market. So after their first foray into a partnership, and this is one of the biggest things I think entrepreneurs learn, is failure and overcoming obstacles in order to be successful. The relationship that my parents had with their partner, who was a family member, turned out extremely and horribly wrong, and they were basically put out on the street. And this is the only time in my parents' lives for about 6 months that neither one of them were working. So when you have that fight or flight mentality, and literally your very last paycheck or how you're going to get food on the table comes to mind, is when you work your hardest, you are the most creative, and through that process, my parents were able to find another C-store gas station, which they purchased in early 1994. That was a springboard to the success that they have today. And I think what happened with that family member and all of the hardship it caused on my parents helped them and engendered them basically to be able to be successful in the future. Because once you have a failure, a drawback, it makes you work even harder, so the next time around you're going to be even more successful, but you're going to learn from your mistakes. And that is where, my friends, my story comes in. In the summer of 2000, I'm 16 years old, just got my driver's license, and like every other 16-year-old, I'm sitting there telling my parents, hey, I want to go to the beach, I want to do this, I want to do that. Well, my father is like, hey, you've got to come and work with me. I just bought 2 new gas stations, and I need you to help me stock all of them, modernize them, put in all of these systems and all of this. So I spent the whole summer of 2000 working for my father, and that was my first step and introduction into the world of entrepreneurship. So along with helping my father over the summer, one of the new things that we were able to afford was a computer when I was in middle school, and using AOL 2.0, 2.5. If any of you millennials still remember that, we had access to these, and it really helped me. And then I remember when Napster first came out, I would say in 1999 maybe, the biggest thing back then was burning CDs and music, because you'd have to pay $20 for a CD, and when you were able to listen to it on a computer as an MP3 player instead of carrying around a Sony Walkman, it was great. So I had my mother go buy me a CD burner, And in high school, what I would do is go to all of my friends and ask them, what CDs do you guys want me to burn for you? It's $5. And I would sell burned CDs and then download a playlist or songs off Napster. And for anyone that wanted a specific set of songs on their CDs, I would charge an extra $5. So for a customized CD, you could get one for $10 with 15 songs, whereas from multiple artists. And instead of buying 5 or 10 different CDs and only listening to 1 or 2 of those songs, you could have all of your songs on there. And we all know what happened to Napster, the lawsuits and everything. But what many people don't know is after Napster, there was LimeWire. And everyone used LimeWire. And there were so many other ways to download songs. I think if I go back to my original iPod from 2001, I probably have 2,000 or 3,000 songs on that iPod. It's sitting somewhere in my house. So I chose at this point to join the fraternity, and I would say probably outside of my parents coming to America, this was one of the single best decisions in my life. The friendships, the brotherhood, and that I made throughout the process and that I still have today is undeniable. And we all, as Asian Americans, came from a very similar background where many of our parents were either entrepreneurs or professionals and kind of had a similar upbringing. And so having someone else to talk to about these things is huge. You normally don't get those. And I had the opportunity to do that, to find like-minded individuals. And with that, I was able to thrive and prosper throughout my college career. So throughout my college career, I did do a ton of entrepreneurial activities where one of the main things we did was promote parties. We would get a company out of South Florida where one of my friends, good friends, would do the graphic design. And he today is now a graphic designer. And he started by designing these flyers for parties that we would throw at the club. This is pretty much, I will say, a lot of it was his idea. I kind of tagged along with that and brought in some other ideas, such as hiring freshmen to go out and flyer all the dorms. So instead of us having to do it, we would get freshmen and pay them 20 or 30 bucks and a bottle of alcohol, and they would flyer all the rooms, and it would save us so much time. That, along with the other things I did, maybe we'll talk about later on in a book that I write, were some of the precursors to actually starting a legitimate business on my own. And as you could see, the thematic quotes and the underlying principles here are that I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My parents came here from a different country, and so maybe I was born with it. However, I think a lot of the characteristics of an entrepreneur are things that people can learn and achieve, because a lot of them are right in here. So hard work, perseverance, stick-to-itiveness, and finding gaps in the market and filling those gaps. I think that is key. Like when you look at something, when I'm out, let's say I'm at a restaurant or a clothing store, wherever, at the mall, I look at things differently. Like, hey, what's going on here? Why is this here? Where are the gaps? Like, as many people know today, there is a ton of e-commerce because people don't go to the actual mall. But who goes to the mall? Why? How can you leverage an actual e-commerce space with a retail space? And these are kind of some of the things that when you start thinking like an entrepreneur, those are the questions you'll ask, and those are the questions that'll lead you to the type of business that you want to open for yourself. So this brings us to spring of 2006. Graduation is upon us, and I have the hard choice of deciding, am I going to go work in banking and finance like a bunch of my friends and other people that I know at, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, any of the Wall Street firms? Or do I take that opportunity, go back home, do the unglamorous thing, I would say, of going to work for my father, listening to him, and helping with the family business, which now, as you remember at this point, is 3 gas stations. So guys, stay tuned to hear the second episode of the podcast.